All right. So as Tawanda mentioned, my name is, I'll introduce myself while she's getting straightened out. My name is Lance Caldwell, and Tawanda and I work for EPA Region 2 in the Environmental Justice team. So Tawana is the coordinator for environmental justice and children's health, children's environmental health, and I help with several programs, but I assist Tawana with a lot of the programs that she works with, but especially with EJSCEEN, which is we'll talk, a lot more about that if you all aren't already familiar. I work with a lot the environmental justice screening tool that EPA developed.
All right, so thank you. I want to welcome each and every one of you. I hope we address all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so first we're going to start off.
Can everyone
giving you
please
an
put
overview.
themselves on mute if you're not speaking?
Thank you. So we're going to start with the overview of the training, and we're going to have a poll question. If you have access to the internet, it's menti.com, and the code is 57421868. What does EJ mean to you? Then we'll go into what is EJ, the history of EJ, what is an EJ community, a little bit on redlining, introduction to EJSCREEN, and then a demonstration of the tool, and not necessarily all in that order. All right. So what does EJ mean to you? And we'll show the poll results once we finish this section. All right. So what is EJ? How did we get there? So I'm going to give you a little bit of background and history of EJ. In 1992, Office of Equity was formed at EPA. In 94, President Bill Clinton signs an executive order 12898. And at that time, at the EPA, the Office of Equity became the Office of Environmental Justice. And in 2021, President Biden signed an executive order, a couple of executive orders, 13985, 14008, 13990. And EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And again, across various states and federal and locals, they have different definitions. So this is just a definition for EPA. So I'm going to switch over to a video. I need to unshare and share again. Let's just. All right, so pause because you can't hear it. Share. I'm waiting for the video to load.
Jamal.
Can you hear it this
This
way?
is Jamal.
Nope, I heard the echo. 1 second.
We can't hear anything. We also can't see the video.
Yeah, I went to press play and I hear the echo because it's on my computer. So no matter how much we practice, things have to find out. So because I'm not on Teams, it's going to continue to be an echo. So I'm going to skip the video. But it was a brief video on redlining, and it just talked about. I'm going to be apologizing through this whole thing because of Teams. So it was a video on redlining where it talked about two people who live
I'm sorry, Tawana. I don't think we can.
each other.
I don't think we can hear you again. I don't know what's wrong this
I
time.
don't know. I have no clue. This usually only happens on Zoom, not Teams. So can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yeah,
Barely. And I'm on the phone. So I'm not sure. So I apologize. I literally have the phone to my mouth. Can you hear me better now?
Yep, better.
Okay, so I literally have the phone to my mouth. Okay, so basically it was a video on redlining, a little short 4-minute video, which let me go back to share my screen, and then maybe you can pull the, I can share the slides later on. You watch the video. Go back to share my screen. Again, I was saying I'll be apologizing all day. We practiced, we did test runs, we did everything. I was saying, team has the final say so. Okay. So it was just a short video on how how redlining started. Okay. So an oral history on EJ. So examples of injustice are embedded throughout the laws and policies and practices of the government structures and systems. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see examples what are included. So basically, here the picture on the right, you'll see 3 people watching a soccer game. Under equality, the assumption is everyone benefits from the same support, which you can see the person in the yellow shirts cannot see the game. Under equity, everyone gets the support they need, but reasons for inequity are not addressed because others may feel like, oh, I didn't get something, but they're just trying to make everyone equal. Under justice, the cause of the inequity was addressed, but the systemic barrier was removed. So everyone gets to watch the game. And I want to turn it over to Lance to add a little bit more to that slide.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just another way of saying it too is that, equity was just kind of what was originally brought up when talking about the injustices, or not the injustices, but the issues with environmental, obviously, like who was being affected by environmental factors. The term equity was used, and the purpose of equity is trying to close the gap, but what justice does is trying to find the reason for that gap and doing something about that reason.
All right, thank you. Right. All right. Any questions? Not that I think I can't see them, but let's see. All right. So additional information as far as disproportionate impacts. You have environmental impacts. You have proximity and exposure to environmental hazards, unique exposure pathways, cumulative and multiple environmental impacts, lack of voice and public participation, vulnerable infrastructure, and vulnerable population. So what is an EJ community? We usually say EJ community for short, but the term should be communities with EJ concerns. And communities with EJ concerns are people who live, work, play, and pray in the most polluted environments are commonly people of color, indigenous, and low income. These communities suffer from disproportionate impacts from interactions of 4 categories of stress: environment, health, economic, and social. These impacts are often the result of generation, systemic racism, and disinvestment, lack of meaningful public participation, and have poor access to information. So EJ at EPA now, our goals is to integrate EJ integration at EPA. EJ is integrated in all EPA decisions and policies. Doing EJ is standard practice in all we do at EPA. Example, using EJSCEEN to inform us of decisions and policies. Communities with EJ concerns are meaningful engagement, empowered, and receive fair treatment. Improve environmental and public health outcomes in communities with EJ concerns. So now, let's see if I can get to the poll results and show it to you. All right, let me unshare my screen and pull that up. All right, so here are the poll results. What does EJ mean to you? So, in equity, fairness, equality, regional safety, and I don't know how to pronounce that last one. All right, well, thank you for participating in the survey. And I'll now turn it over to Lance for the, oh wait, nope, I do have one more slide just to give you an introduction on what the EJSCEEN tool is. All right, and share my screen. Listen, Teams is so not my friend today. All right, sorry for the delay. All right, so introduction to EJSCEEN training, EJSCEEN tool. Lance, I'm just going to turn it over to you because no matter what I'm pressing over here, my screen is not moving. I tell you.
So instead of the slides, you just want me to jump to the demo?
Oh, it finally turned.
There we go.
So I'll just give this disclaimer. EPA doesn't designate location as EJ areas. EJSCREEN is used as a screening tool. In that capacity, it gives us a starting point to dig deeper into areas of concern. So what is EJSCREEN? The tool is a web-based GIS tool for nationally consistent EJ screening and mapping. It combines environmental and demographic data to highlight areas where vulnerable populations may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. So which Lance will go further into, there's 11 EJ indexes, one for each environmental indicator. The data is updated, the environmental data is updated annually. The demographics data is used from the U.S. Census Bureau American Community Survey, also known as ACS. The highest resolution data available. It's easy to use, and the data is downloadable. You have the ability to download the data. The types of data in EJSCREEN, which you'll see on the screen, is 11. It has 11 environmental indicators, which is there, and the 6 demographic indicators are people of color, population, low-income population, linguistically isolated, less than high school education, under age 5 and over 64, and using those to give you the EJ index, which Lance discussed. So benefits of using EJSCREEN. Social demographics may help identify a community potential with vulnerabilities in conjunction with health information. Environmental land use information may help determine whether a community may be considered overburdened and also identify potential ways for exposure. Health information may help identify a community potential vulnerabilities in conjunction with demographic information. And just as you have something that benefits, there's also caveats and limitations. So environmental indicators are mostly screening level proxies for actual exposure or risk. Indicators vary in vintage. EJSCREEN does not cover all environmental or EJ issues. Census data have limitations and can obscure in small communities. Results should be verified on the ground when possible because we know things, could change. EJSCREEN does not identify EJ communities. It just helps identify areas that may have higher pollution burdens and vulnerable populations. All right, EJSCREEN data, and now I'll turn it over to you, Lance.
All right, I'll share my screen. So I'm going to do a live demonstration of the tool. And I can't see the chat now. If you have any questions during this, it's definitely interactive, especially since there's not too many people on the call, so it should be pretty orderly. So just feel free to verbally interrupt me if you have a question. So first of all I did to get here is just Google EJSCREEN, and this was the first thing that popped up. And of course, I brought it to New Rochelle immediately. But this tool is available to the public. You don't have to download anything. It's on the browser. And just first of all, EJSCREEN was built by EPA to be very simple and intuitive. So you don't need experience with other mapping systems like GIS or anything like that to be able to use it. It just takes a little bit of time to get the hang of it. And there's also a lot of resources that are out there on the EPA EJSCREEN site. So many guides, so many videos to help you through different troubleshooting. And now you have Tawana and me if you ever have any specific questions or you can't find the answers to it on the website, you can always throw an email to either Tawana or me, and we can definitely help you out. So another reminder, just as Tawana mentioned, the purpose of EJSCREEN is to help you to screen for the presence or absence of potential environmental justice concerns. So it's strictly a screening tool. And the purpose of it isn't to give you answers, it's to help you ask better questions about an area. So here we are in New Rochelle, and you can go anywhere in the United States with this. So first of all, I'll just show just some so to select a location, you can either select it on the map or you can type in an address. And I understand that the address that is of concern to the group is 80. Just typed it into the address bar here, and we've already found it. So once you have an area selected, you can select it in multiple ways. So let's say if we're looking at a site like this, then we would just click straight on the site, and then you can add a buffer. So let's say we want a half-mile buffer. We want to know all the things that are going on in a half-mile radius around that area. So that's one way of looking at it. And when we do a report, it's going to report on everything that's within this circle. But there's also other ways that you can select areas. You can draw a shape around an area. Let's say you're wanting to look at, just because it's in front of me, for whatever reason, you're wanting to look at this cemetery, but you can draw a polygon around the cemetery or whatever site that you're looking at. And now you've got a selected area here. You can also add features. So I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see the features a little bit better. But some of the layers that you can add are sites reporting to EPA, and that includes Superfund sites, that includes brownfields. It's taking a little bit to load up. Water discharge, toxic releases. And let's say we want to look at Superfund. I've got it selected. I don't see any on the map. It's either taking a while to load or there's really none around, which is a very good thing. We're going to look at brownfield sites. We have 3 here within the area. Other parts on the layers, you have hazardous waste. You can look at schools. Prisons, public housing, subsidized housing, and there's new climate layers that just got added a few months ago, which are really interesting. I'll just show you just because it's a little scary and fun at the same time. But you can select the coastal flood hazard areas, and so these are the places that have the most number of hazards by NOAA, I believe. I don't know why it's not showing up. You can also look at the 100-year floodplain to see if whatever area you're looking at is within the 100-year floodplain. And you can also look at, it just finally loaded, the coastal flood hazard zone. So the darker areas have more hazards as defined by NOAA, I believe, is where the source of that is. And you can look at the sea level. This is the part that's really scary, is you can look at the sea level rise after 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. I'll do the 4 feet. I live in Manhattan, so I don't spend too much time on that tool before I get really sad. Here it is, loading slow. Hopefully on your computer with a decent internet connection, this tool will run a little more smoothly. I think because I'm sharing my video and sharing this browser, it's going a little bit slow.
Hi, Lance, it's Lisa. What does this mean? What are the dark blue? What does that mean?
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I selected the 4 feet sea level rise. And so the dark blue is what if/when the sea level rises 4 feet, which I don't know when that is predicted. I think that's probably the predicted is like 150 years from now, but this is what will now be considered sea, what will be underwater when the sea level rises above 4 feet. And so this is where, racial justice, climate justice, and environmental justice, that's where they find intersectionality is when you're looking at a community and you're able to see that, in a predicted amount of time, parts of it might be underwater, or parts of it might look differently than it does now. And just kind of knowing the predicted future of that as it involves climate is really important. I said it's a slow reaction right now to my clicks. But the next thing is really where the interesting or the meat, I guess, for lack of a better word, of EJSCEEN is in the EJSCEEN maps here. I really wish this would go away. Maybe it'll go away on its own. We just have a daunting wall of dark blue right here coming after us. So as Tawana mentioned, there are 11 environmental indicators, and most of them have to do with air, and they all have to do with different things. There's also demographic, well, I'll show you. So let's look at diesel. So this is diesel particulate matter levels in the air. So this is just the straight environmental indicators. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think that me sharing my screen is making this, is delaying this a little bit. Let's see if it works better on the tab. Okay, so there we go. So this is the environmental indicator, and here's the legend. So obviously the red is the higher percentiles, and the yellow is the lesser percentiles. And I'll explain the percentiles in just a little bit. But before that, I'll show you the demographic indicators. So there's people of color population, low-income population, linguistically isolated, and we have some others here that Tawana mentioned. The demographic index is basically just the product of the people of color population value times the low-income population value into one value. So it's just whatever the percentage of people of color, whatever the percentage of people of low income, those values are multiplied together, and those factors are what is now the demographic index. So we can do that here as well. So when you do demographic index, it's not looking at people of color, it's not looking at low income, it's looking at where are those rates both happening the highest. So here's New Rochelle with just the demographic indicator. Now, what makes EJSCEEN novel is that it takes all this information is publicly accessible, and it takes these environmental indicators, which are publicly accessible. It takes these demographic indicators that come from the US Census Bureau, and it combines them together into one layer. So it's not just looking at where are environmental conditions the worst. It's not just looking at where do people of color and where do people of low income live. It's looking at where, when you combine those layers, what you're searching for now, what you're screening for, is where are people of color, where are people of low income disproportionately impacted by environmental conditions. So we'll go back to the diesel PM for this. This is the EJ index for diesel PM. And now we can see the areas where once again, it's not the fact that it's not simply that the environmental indicator is higher there. It's not simply that the demographic indicator is higher, but this is where both are disproportionately high. And so just to explain the percentile a little bit, percentile is different than percentage. So when it says 95 to 100 percentile here for the dark red areas, it's not saying that 95 to 100% of anything's going on. What it's saying is that the folks that live there, they are disproportionately impacted by these environmental indicators at a higher amount than 95 to 100% of the rest of the country. Right now it's comparing to the rest of the United States. So if you looked at all block groups in the United States, those who are living in these red areas are inflicted with diesel particulate matter in the air at a higher rate because of their demographics, because of their race or their income, at a higher rate than 95 to 100% of block groups in the United States. So this is really what EJSCEEN is the purpose of is to look at. All the other things are really worth considering when you're looking at cumulative impacts, but this is what makes EJSCEEN unique or novel is this screening. Just like Tawana said, obviously there's a lot of caveats with any type of mapping data, any type of screening data. Once you look too closely, that information gets a little fuzzy, and it's slightly less, I guess, accurate. So that's why it's so important to use EJSCEEN as a screening tool, and that can help you ask better questions about that area, and then you start looking at other sources to find out more about that area that you're looking at. So the last thing I'll do is show how to make a report. So let's go back to 80. And then let's make a half a mile buffer around it. I don't know if this is what y'all want to do. I'm just using this as an example. Let's say that you'll have a question, and you're saying, like, well, we want to know, they're building this. I wasn't on the meeting that debriefed on the situation fully, but let's say you're wanting to look at this area. You want to know, what's the situation on people in the area that are living half a mile from this area? So what you'd want to do is you'd make this buffer. Like I said, I put a half mile around it. You can even name it. And you now have these options here. You can explore reports, which is a really quick way of looking at this area. So let's go over to EJ index. You see we're at the environmental indicator, which doesn't take demographics into consideration. We have the demographics, but here's the EJ index that combines the two. And we see that in this area, in that circle, the rates are pretty high when compared to the rest of the United States. And there's no absolute rule of thumb, but here at EPA, we tend to kind of, I guess, the number that we've subjectively arbitrarily set is 80. So if something's above the 80th percentile in any one of these, that kind of almost like triggers us to pay particular attention to that area and say, oh, like the people living here, the community here is really being quite disproportionately affected by this. And so you can see there's at least 5 indicators that are above the 80th percentile. So if we were doing an analysis of this area, just using EJSCEEN alone, we would definitely say that this area likely has environmental justice concerns, and this is helping to see that. To get a more full report, you can click this Get Printable Standard Report. And I went ahead, I knew that the internet would be bad, so I went ahead and did it earlier, so it's already ready. So here is just a more detailed breakdown of the same thing that was in that chart. The blue is comparing it to the rest of the country. The orange is comparing it to the rest of the state of New York. Here's the map. It gets into even more details here. Another thing that you can do, oops, is click this, get the ACS report. That's the American Community Survey. That's where EJSCREEN gets its demographic data. So if you click that, now you get a really more detailed and interesting view of who is living there. And so it has breakdowns of the number of people of color, the percentage, and what races live in this area, age, sex, education. One thing that we used probably the most at EPA that it's probably the most interesting when you're doing community outreach is the language portion. Sorry if I'm scrolling around too sporadically, but you can see the linguistically isolated households that 68% of households speak, that didn't work out, speak Spanish. And 51% speak a language other than English in the home. And then, so it doesn't particularly say which language. So you go down here and there's a breakdown of all the major groups of languages and what people are speaking. So you can see that most are speaking Spanish. The non-English languages are mostly Spanish, a little bit French. This one's just a category, other Indo-European language, Chinese, other Asian language. And so if you're doing community outreach, this is really helpful to say, you know, if we do a community meeting and we only have English and Spanish there, we're going to be leaving some people out. We're going to be speaking a language that some people in the community aren't speaking. So what other languages should we provide if we're doing outreach? So as far as what I've prepared for the demonstration, that's about it. I will just end by saying that once you select your location and explore the maps and create the reports, then it's up to you to decide how much you want, how you want to use that information to better consider the environmental justice in the work. And again, EJSCREEN is not designed to answer questions. It's designed to help you ask better questions about a community. So I'm going to stop sharing. Or first, before I stop sharing, does anyone have any questions at this point?
Would you like Lance to focus on anything that you would need to maybe share or show others as far as the area where the Starbucks drive-through would be?
You know, this is Lisa. Hi. Thank you very much, Lance, for this. I guess my question is, we have a report, we share it with our local elected officials or even the state elected officials. How well versed are they in these data points? Is there like a guide for people who don't know what this report purports to illustrate?
So let me see if I can reiterate what I think you're saying. As far as the screen where Lance had mentioned about the report, does it give a ledger or a breakdown? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, I believe so. Lance, the screen that I have where it shows the let me share where it shows a report. Lance, maybe you can pull up one while I'll just share my screen. So when you get the report, how he did on the map, and then you have the demographics and environmental data, this is really blurry, so I'm not sure if you can actually see. It gives you the variables that you selected. So here in this one, it's the PM2 information, and then up at the top is the ledger on how it's compared to the state, the region, and the US, and then this is the national percentile. So a standard report gives you all the indicators at once for a single specific location. And I'm
Okay.
not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure this answers either. I'll just say that the reports aren't official. This is just, you know, the data that EJSCEEN has at the moment. So while the reports could be used to send to an official as kind of along with other, you know, a bit of evidence along with other evidence that this community is facing disproportionate environmental impacts, it's not in an official report.
Hi, this is Bruce. I have two questions, if I may. The first one is the circle that you drew around 80 Huguenot, a half-mile radius, and then you've produced a report with that circle drawn. Does that report give us an average for that half-mile radius? Is that what we're looking at?
Right. So it's all the people who live within that circle. On the report, it tells the approximate population.
So it gives the demographics for the people who live within that radius. What about the environmental variables? Does it give us an average environmental exposure for that larger area? For that
Exactly. And within the report and within those bar graphs that we're showing, it's only considering people who live within that circle.
Got it. So and the second, thank you for that. And the second, and thank you for all of this, by the way. This is a great presentation. I've played with the tool a little bit, and I learned a lot more from you today. So I'm looking forward to exploring it more. But I did have a question about the caveat that was raised, and you've said it several times, and it was also in one of the introductory slides, that this is screening information. It provides questions and not answers. So maybe we get some questions after looking at this. Where do we go to find the answers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot of different sources that you can use. One of them, because EJSCEEN uses U.S. Census Bureau information, a lot of this information in more detail and with a little bit more certainty can be found in the American Community Survey report for that area.
That's for the demographics. What about for the environmental exposures?
Right. First of all of the 11 environmental indicators, some of them, as Tawana mentioned, are proxies for actual readings. Some of them come from actual monitors that EPA has put out, or from monitors that others have put out that EPA reads. Some of them are models of the area, and so for more specific certainty, it would have to be something else besides EJSCEEN. I know the question that you're asking, and at this point, I can't say exactly what source. We can look at some sources because it's all different. It's different depending on the county and the state on who is looking at these indicators. But a lot of this is available from the state or from the county or from a local environmental agency that has done readings.
And if we have specific, I don't want to get too deep into this on this call, but if we do have questions generated by the reports that we see, can we contact you for help in a deeper dive?
I was going to
definitely.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I have a question. This is Michael. Again, echoing Bruce and Lisa, thank you for this. It's very helpful. We recently received a notification that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is doing will require brownfield remediation on a site within that half miles of 80 Huguenot Street. I'm assuming based on the data that you have available to you that request or the notification that it is a brownfield site is not part of what would be recorded today on the map. I'm just wondering if that's true or not.
Oh, I see. It's not officially a brownfield site yet. That's what you're saying?
Correct. But the DEC put out, it's being developed, and the developer now needs to remediate the essentially the requirements for the developer to remediate it.
Right. Likely it wouldn't be showing up like on what I showed just now. It probably wasn't included. EPA updates this database multiple times a year with one huge update every year. But it probably doesn't have that if it's still pending.
So it could be that the conditions are actually worse than whatever is recorded in the maps that you have.
Absolutely, and that's, I mean, that's one of the many problems. I mean, there's so many great things you can do with mapping tools, so many great things you can do with screening tools, but that's definitely one of the problems, is that you're always leaving some stuff out. So everything with this, there's a few grains of salt that need to be taken while using this tool and others like it.
Thank you.
I have a question. Following up on Michael's question just a little bit, are the dates in which the updates occur, is that public knowledge with EPA?
Yes. When you go on EJSCEEN, it will tell you the source, and the ACS is updated every year, and everything else, it'll have it on there.
All right. So if I was interested, if I wanted to know the dates that the updates would occur, for example, would it occur quarterly? Would it occur semi-annually? Would that be something that people could anticipate?
I know it's updated annually, but the actual month on the ACS, that part I'm not 100% sure, but I can break that down and find out for you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate.
Yes. ACS. Okay. And the date that it was published. Okay. Any other questions?
Well,
Piggybacking on that, when is the census information going to be pushed into these maps? The current census.
I can find out from our headquarters office as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't an exact answer to that, but just another thing with where EJSCREEN gets its data. There's most of the indicators. There's a bit of a delay, and that delay can range between 1 year to a few years, and it just has to do with how the availability of the data and getting it into the right format to be able to use in the tool, and then getting it onto the EJSCREEN tool. I can say that because Tuan and I are in very heavy contact with EPA headquarters and the team that puts on this tool. From their end, it's instant. When they have access to it, they're putting it onto EJSCREEN. The issue is when they are able to get access to the data in the form that it needs to be in to be able to have it streamlined. Because for them to put an update, for them to put any indicator, it needs to be the entire country with the same level of data. So they have to wait for several things. Sometimes it takes a few years. But that's always worth considering too. And there's a page on the EPA site for EJSCREEN that explains what year each environmental indicator's data is from, and some of those are 4 to 6 years ago, and so that's worth considering when looking in an area that that it's a snapshot, and it's not quite it's not 2021 that they're really looking at. Same with the ACS report, as you might have saw that it's the ACS report for 2014 to 2018, and that's just because the information from the more recent ones are not available to be used in this format.
on the topic of data integration, hi, this is Blaze. Really appreciate the presentation. Is there a process by which citizen science can be conducted and that data evaluated and submitted for consideration to be included in the maps?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I'm sorry, Tawana. I'll just say this real quick yeah, we're a big advocate of citizen science. That probably wouldn't happen for EJSCEEN because, like I said, the only data sets they use are nationally available that have to be the same level of integrity in every block group in the entire nation. However, to kind of bounce back to the question that Bruce asked, you know, that information is available. If it exists, then it's available in your community or your state, and that is a good supplement to the EJSCEEN usage. Tawana, what were you going to say?
Same thing along those lines. Yep.
Hi, Bruce again. Let me just ask one more question, if I may. And this is about the granularity of the data. So very concretely, we're looking at 80 Huguenot Street, and we're looking at an adjacent public housing residential building, and really, you know, interested in getting data about the impact of this proposed drive-through on that specific residential building. Can EJ, how granular is the data? My guess is that we're going to get data by census district or census tract or some unit, or maybe something much larger, rather than data about that specific building. How useful? So that's my question: is how granular is the data that we're looking at on EJSCEEN?
That I don't have an answer for, but I'll write it down. And when I speak with our headquarters office, I can get a response for that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's not going to be. It's going to be the census block group, which is the smallest that it's really looking at, and you can kind of see it with the polygonal shapes in that map that I was sharing. That, you know, that's as small as it'll go. If you zoom in, it's not gonna you know, get any more precise. So most of them are. I forgot the number of people in each, but it's a census block group. It's the smallest.
How many people live in a typical urban census block?
If you give me a little bit, I can tell you.
Okay. Again, you know, you can get me these answers later. We don't need to take up the call if you don't have the data right at your fingertips.
Sounds great. I should be able to find it pretty quick.
I think on that slide that I had, Lance, where it breaks it down in group block, census block, the narrative have, I think, on like 250 to X amount of people.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll track that down afterwards. Thanks.
All right, so are there any other questions? I have, I think, one or two more slides. And I had a survey, but then we did a dry run, and it's only, I have to find a different format. The survey it can only be used for people that's inside EPA. Wasn't aware of that until today. So once we get a different format, I'll share it with Lisa, and she can share with you all. And
That's
I
perfect.
just feel very bad that my teams didn't work. So if you have other questions or some other deeper dive, I would be very interested in doing this again. And I think the issue, because now I have access to the chat, I think it's because I didn't come into the room first. It made everything go haywire. So that's something I learned.
But this was very helpful. Thank you so much, Tawanda and Lance. And we will
Thank
be back.
you.
We will circle back with you with more questions, I'm sure.
All right. So basically, the EJ, everyone can put this up on mute. I hear it back now. The EJ, thank you. Expanding EJ screen data. Okay. All right. So expanding EJ screen data, we're continuously looking for EJ relevant data to incorporate, criteria for inclusion of indicators, environmental indicators such as climate change, drinking water, pesticides, and underground storage tanks. Other indicators of health data and amenities such as access to grocery stores. So that's what looking to expand EJ screen data. And we mentioned about the EJ screen tools and learning resources. There's a website, epa.gov/EJ screen. And then if you want to see videos, it's when you go on there, you'll see the link, but it's /EJ screen -videos. It provides guidance documents, video tutorials, technical information, and when you're doing your mapping, it helps you understand the results and other tools and resources. And I think we did the questions part. All right. So any additional questions?
No. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay, well, it's
Great.
posted in here. The census blocks groups generally have 600 to 3,000 people. Okay, so that answers one of the questions. So before we go, I have the questions that I need to get back to you on. Is the update, how often, or like a specific date of when the data is published, and when will the current U.S. Census data be published?
Yep.
Oh, and then how granulated is the data? And then the last question was just posted in the chat. All right, well, thank you for your patience. And hopefully we can share this video. Now that I know we can't share the survey link, I'm trying to figure out if this all just in-house for us. But we'll meet with IT and find out. Also, I'll find out what happened on my side. I'm thinking it's because I wasn't the first person in the group. Maybe we could stop recording this part.